So what are the different types of storage services which are available when it comes to AWS? So the first one would be S3. And what does this S3 means? Simple storage service. Why the name S3? Because S is coming three times. Simple storage service. We are going to see this in detail. So this is there, and then we have something called as, this we already know, EBS. What is EBS? Elastic block storage, right? We have already completed this one, right? Elastic block storage. Then we have something called as actually this is a part of S3. So S3 Glacier, and we have something called as EFS, that is Elastic File System, and we have something called as Snowball. And we also have something as storage gateway that we are going to see in detail later on. So we also have something called as storage gateway. So this is the complete storage services which are provided by AWS. Now the question is that why these many storage types? Storage is used to store something, right? That means if they provide a single storage also, then also we can store everything over there. Then why these many classifications? Why these many types of storage services are there? So each of them has its own purpose. Each of them has its own purpose. And this is very, very important when it comes to real time and also interview, also the AWS certification exam. Why? Because almost around 25 percentage of the AWS certified examination solution architect, right, you can expect from this particular topic, that is storage. And so in this 25% you can expect 20% from S3 itself. So 20% weightage will be there from S3 itself, right? So till now we have discussed about one of these types, that is elastic block storage. Now we know that elastic block storage is a block storage, right? Today we are going to start with S3, that is simple storage service, and we will be covering its subparts, that is Glacier and all other storage parts that we are going to see later. But now when it comes to S3, this is an object-based storage. Now immediately another question comes to mind, that what is the difference between block storage and what is the difference between object storage? So in order to understand that, we should first understand what actually block storage means. What actually block storage means. So I'll just give you a small example of block storage, and then I'll explain you what is object storage. So first of all, we need to understand, so block storage and object storage. So EBS is a block storage and S3 is an object storage. Fine. Now when we talk about block storage, why this is called a block storage and why this is called an object storage. So what actually happens at the back end is, whenever you create a block storage, that is EBS, so just assume that this one is EBS. So what it is going to do is, so it will be having some data, right? It is going to store some data, and this is connected to the EC2. So this at the back end is going to divide it into blocks, small blocks, right? Like this, so many blocks are available. So I'm not going beyond this. So just assume that some part of the data is stored here and some part of the data is stored here, right? So they've divided into some parts. Now when you try to create another block storage from this, so as we have already seen by incremental snapshots and all, so only the blocks which are new, that are copied, that is copied during snapshot, and rest other blocks are moved. So this is how it happens at the back end. Now the question is, so just assume that some data is here and some data is here and some data is here. So how does it know when we segregate this as a new volume? So how does it know that where we should place each data so that everything is organized? So the answer for that is, each and every block here is indexed, right? Index means like in arrays we have, right, indexing 0 1 2 3 4, and using the index we are able to navigate throughout the array. So here also each and every block is indexed. Now coming to the object storage, there is no such concept like it's getting divided into block. So what is an object actually? Any particular thing that you want to store is an object. You may store a PDF file, you may want to a video file, it could be anything, it could be anything. So basically if you want to store a particular object, so let's say that this is a PDF file, so without dividing this PDF into blocks, it will be stored as it is. This is stored as it is. Now suddenly I want to store an image, I want to store an image. So instead of dividing into blocks, this image is going to be stored as it is, right? So it is not going to be divided into blocks and all. Now one more important point here is that whenever we talk about block storage, we know that operating system is installed on the block storage always, right? And we cannot uh, store operating system here. We can store obviously as an object, but can we use it when it is here? The answer would be no, right? The answer would be no. And one more important point here is that whenever you have to access block storage, suppose this is an EBS volume and you need to access this, then you should always access it via the server, right? That is EC2 server. But if you have to access anything in S3 or which you have stored in S3, then EC2 server is not required to access the objects. So you can access it through internet. So when I say that you can access it via internet, that certainly means that you can access it over HTTP and HTTPS, right? So these are the basic differences between block storage and object storage. So I hope you have noted it down, or else shall I make some points here? See, so what is the first difference between block storage and, I hope you guys understood little bit.
Mm.
Yes,
Yes, it is.
yes or no? Block storage and object storage.
Yes, sir.
So, but I'll give you some notes so that you are able to revise it. So, can you just tell me what we discussed right now? What is the first difference?
Means data is stored in blocks in block storage.
divided into blocks. So I will just write short forms, right?
Yes, divided into blocks. In, in object storage, it is kept as a whole object.
Yeah, entire object is stored, right?
Mm.
So as objects. Okay. Now here, what is the next point? Hmm?
In block storage, like cannot be accessed via internet.
Independently, you cannot access it. That means you need to access via server, correct? Because this is always attached to the server. Independently, can you access the ABS volume? Can you go and see what is there in the ABS volume without accessing it through server? Impossible, right? You can access via internet, right? And next is that whatever, so here you can install and execute programs, right? So operating system will be stored in EBS volume and it will also be up and running, right? Whereas here you cannot install operating system, right? Cannot install operating system, cannot install OS, right? So these are the basic differences between block storage and object storage. Now let's go into S3, right? I hope you have copied these points, right? And you have
Yes, sir.
understood. Now let's go inside S3 topic and let's see what actually S3 is, right? So we know that simple storage service, object-based storage, all these things we know. Now there are certain terms that we should understand while dealing with S3. There are certain
Mm.
terms that we need to understand while we are dealing with S3. Now, what are those terms? Before we dive into this S3, what are those
Um,
terms? So,
Akshay,
yeah, please tell me.
actually, means practically I did not understand like how like this OS is connected and you cannot install OS, the points which you.
See, if you have to store something and that particular thing should be executable, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to execute it, then if it is installed on S3, then it is not executable, right? You cannot install OS, you cannot go and configure OS on an S3 because it's an object-based storage. So that is the
Mm-hmm.
reason as to why we use EBS, right? It is with the server, whereas
Mm-hmm.
S3 is not with the server, right? So can you
Yes.
install OS
No.
where the server is not available, right? It's
Yes. Yes.
impossible,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and if we have to access EBS volume, if we have stored anything in EBS volumes, then you need to access via server, right? Have you seen any time did we access EBS volumes directly without accessing via server? It is impossible, right? You have to attach that particular volume to a server and then you can able to see what is in there inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in S3, it's not like that. Getting
Mm-hmm.
the point?
Yes.
So let's get into simple storage service. Simple storage service. So here, this is very, very important, guys. So let's understand few things here, and then we will move inside this concept. So this is S3. So whenever it comes to S3, you will see some terms that we use on a daily basis. So first term is the bucket. Now, what actually a bucket is? So we take bath, right? So similar kind of concept, not exactly the same, but yeah. So if you see how the bucket looks like, so a bucket looks like this, almost around, little bit changes maybe there, but a bucket looks little bit like this, right? Yes. So whenever we talk about storing anything into S3, we talk about bucket, and this bucket looks exactly like this logically, right? Now,
Mhm.
in our day-to-day lives, what we do, we store water in the bucket, or sometimes we can also store some objects, right? Small objects which are able to fit inside this bucket, we are able to store, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So in AWS also, whenever you have to store anything, right, you first need to create a bucket. You first need to create a bucket, right? So once you create a bucket, so the bucket will be created, and then you can store whatever you want inside this particular bucket. Now, while creating bucket, the name, you should give a name to the bucket. While creating a bucket, you should provide a name to the bucket, and that particular name should be what? Unique. That means no one else should be using a bucket with the same name. Understanding? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, suppose you have created a bucket with a unique name, and AWS said that yes, this name is available, and you have stored something in that bucket, and later on there is a point wherein you feel that I no longer need this bucket. So because it is obviously chargeable, so you will go ahead and delete it, right? So the moment you delete it, then the name that you chose for that bucket will be available again for other accounts to use, right? Understanding?
Yes.
So it will not hold the bucket name forever. So as far as you are using, it will block it, but the moment you delete the bucket, it is available for the global usage. Yes or no? Now,
Yes.
what is the size of the bucket? So usually the size is huge, but usually the size of the bucket is what? 5 TB. Now, can you imagine terabyte? So this much data they are giving by default, and for enterprise accounts, instances where some companies they need more bucket size, then they will have to make a request to AWS. Okay, I want a bucket size for say 10 TB or whatever size, and then AWS will provision their bucket and increase their size. But by default, AWS is giving 5 TB of storage in the bucket. Now the question is, how many buckets I can create in one account? How many buckets can we create from one account? So 100 buckets are allowed from one account, but those many buckets are, you know, we never go ahead and create so many buckets. So while doing the lab and in real time also, usually companies will have maximum 2 buckets. So let's see, go to our console over here, and let's go to the S3 console, and let's see how the S3 console looks like. And remember one thing, guys, and very important, that whenever you select S3 option, so earlier I was in Ohio region, and now you see that, sorry, I am in global. That means what? S3 is global, right? It does not belong to any particular region. Understanding, guys? Yes or no? You are able to see
Yes.
that
Yes.
change?
Yes.
Okay. So here you see, right? We have bucket and all those things are there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, fine. So, but the moment we go ahead and start creating a bucket, you see that we have something called as region. Now, this is very important point. Very important point. Please make a note of that. So, S3 is global, right? bucket, that means S3 bucket, sorry, S3 bucket is regional. Very, very confusing. This multiple times they have asked in AWS certification, right? Because people get confused. Bucket name is unique. Bucket name is unique. Okay, bucket name is unique. Okay, fine. Bucket name is unique. Then what? There are certain rules that we need to follow while creating a bucket name. So lowercase and all those things, we will see that. And it should not be an IP address. All those things are there. You cannot have an IP address because guys, IP address is unique in nature, right? That does not mean that you will go ahead and use an IP address. It does not allow that. So again, so when you delete, and S3 bucket and S3 bucket, when you delete an S3 bucket, what is going to happen, guys? So the name of your S3 bucket will be released by AWS. It will no longer hold it. Okay. So have you noted these points? So let's go back here and you see that it's asking for us to create a bucket.
Akshay,
Yeah.
Akshay, just last one. Can you show it once again? Done, Akshay. Hello.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Akshay, done.
Now, see, now in AWS console, it is going to ask me that please enter your bucket name and other stuff. So we know that, you know, bucket name should be unique. And you see here that the description that it is providing is that the bucket name must be unique across all existing bucket names in Amazon S3, and buckets used as an origin point for Amazon CloudFront, and CloudFront we are going to see later. As of now, you need not to worry. So the point that we have to take care is it should be unique. So suppose I say that the name of my bucket is Karan. So is it available or not? So if it is available, it will take, and if it is not available, then it will reject. So better to take some number. Okay. And what is the region wherein you want to have this bucket? And the region is Ohio region, right? So as of now, I don't have any buckets, right? That means if I had an existing bucket, then I could copy the settings from that existing bucket and all those things, right? So as of now, I'm going to give a name as, so let me provide this point also. So I'll be providing spoon feeding steps from now on, guys. So S3, okay. So in S3, first one is go to services, go to soap services, okay. Open AWS console, go to services, right? You will find S3, click on S3, okay. And then fourth one. So as and when you see, you will be able to see S3 console, okay. Next, In that, what are the sections here? So let me go ahead and see. Okay, so here you see that we have an option called create bucket, right? So click on create bucket, right? So once you click on create bucket, and what is going to happen the next, you see that. So when you click, you have bucket name, region, and copy settings from existing bucket, right? Okay, fine. So you will be able to see what? So bucket name, and you should please enter a unique bucket name. Please enter a unique bucket name, right? And after having that, it will ask for region. Please select the region in which you want to have the bucket, right? So region means please select a region where you want to keep the bucket. So after this, what is going to happen? Fine. It is also giving copy settings from existing S3 bucket. Existing S3 bucket. So initially we don't have any bucket. Initially we don't have any bucket, right? Initially we don't have any bucket. So leave this field as blank. Okay, then what? Let me do that. So we are going to choose a bucket name, and we have selected a region, and here click next. Okay, so when you click on next, we move to, then click next. So this is the first phase of the map. Click on next. Yes, you are able to see that. Click on next. So as and when guys you click on next, what is going to happen here? What is going to happen?
Configure.
Another console you will be able to see, that is configure options, right? And here we have so many options. We are going to see about it in our later classes, right? So we have versioning, server access logs, so many options are there. So here we have something called as advanced settings, and so all these things. So you can give tags and all right? So what I would suggest here is that let's skip this step. Let us skip this step as of now. Okay, and I click on next. So I should write it here. So see here. So seventh step is, what is the seventh step here is click next. Okay. Eighth step. So you will have something called as set permission, right? You will have something called as set permissions. And here you see that one point to be noted, I'm giving here itself. I don't want to waste time anymore. So by default, what is there, guys? By default it is blocked or allowed. Block all public access, right? By default all public accesses are blocked. So by default all public accesses are blocked. Okay, so ninth step. So if it is blocked, then what is the use? So I'll just uncheck this one. Okay, as and when you uncheck this one and you get something called as acknowledgement, you just acknowledge it and then click on next. Right, so uncheck and acknowledge. Right, what to uncheck, what to acknowledge means. So uncheck blocked access. Okay, so I hope you are able to understand that. Wait, let me just rewrite it again. So uncheck blocked access. Great. Now coming to here. Now what is the point? So what is the next step? So coming to the next step, we have something. So we have unchecked these permissions and all. Okay, and then we should click on create a bucket. So just click on create bucket. Yes or no. So we have clicked on create bucket. So what is going to happen here? So you are able to see. So current one, there is a bucket. Earlier there was no bucket, right? And access,
Yes.
it is showing that object and all is public, and when it is created and all those things, it is going to show. Now let me go inside this particular bucket. Let me go inside this particular bucket. So as of now, it says that the bucket is empty and upload new object to get started. So I just click on upload. Okay, just click on upload, go to add files. So as I told you, right, we can store anything over here. So let me go ahead and upload an image. Okay, let me go ahead and upload an image. Right, and so this particular image you see here. So one thing you should also remember that to upload a larger file than 160 GB, we should use what? We should use CLI. That means you cannot do it using the console, or else you should use SDK. SDK is nothing but software development kit, right? Or else we need to use some REST API, right? We are not bothered about all these things as of now, right? Because we don't have any file which is more than 160 GB. Okay, so this is uploaded and I click on next. And
Akshay, uh, where did you get the image from? This one, easy ed.
I uploaded it from my local computer, right?
Okay, you uploaded from local, right? Okay.
You can upload anything, I told you, right? So here you see that manage public permissions, right? And it's do not grant public read access to this object, correct or not? So here we need to go ahead and say grant public read access. Okay, and just click on next. Right, and so don't worry, these are the storage classes, we are going to see it later on. And we say upload. Okay, so you see it's getting uploaded here and it says that it is 100% successful, right? So now inside this bucket we have something called as what? This image. You able to see?
Yes.
Now so go to S3, go to this bucket, particular bucket, and then you are able to see this particular image over here, right?
Yes.
Yes, that means we have successfully uploaded an object, right? And you can select this and you can delete it later on and whatever stuff. So here you see all the details came, right? And here we have something called as URL, right? So we have something called as the URL. So object URL. So whenever you store an object, you will get an object URL. So you can copy this object URL. So you can copy this object URL, and what you can do here is you can go ahead and paste it in your browser, right? And you are able to see that this image is visible. So if I post it in the chat, so you can try it on your PC, and please let me know whether you are able to access it or not. All right, please confirm me immediately. Yes, guys, please. Are you able to access?
Just a second.
Yes or no? Both
Yes,
of you,
yes.
right? So next one is upload an object. It could be anything. Upload an object and click on next. Finally, click on upload, right? And when you upload, what is there? Object URL will be generated, correct? Object URL will be generated, Object URL will be generated. So using this object URL, you are able to access, right?
Yes.
Huh? Using the URL, access the object. That is what. So understood how we are able to access it?
Yes.
Yes, and I hope you have noted all the points.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So I think S3 is clear to you now. What is
Hmm.
S3 and why we use a S3?